The confirmation of Secretary of Education nominee Betsy Devos was marked by an historic tiebreaker from Vice President Mike Pence this week. At odds over the nomination were Colorado Senators Cory Gardner and Michael Bennett. Gardner noted that Congress will hold Devos accountable for her commitment to public schools, while Bennett said Devos lacks the experience and understanding to be an effective Secretary of Education. David, regardless of how tight the vote was, and this was the tightest nomination or confirmation vote in history, does it matter now that she's confirmed?
The ideal would be to bring people together in a bipartisan way and abolish the Department of Education. It is not a federal responsibility. Our constitutional system is it should be state and local, and one of the problems with everybody getting mad every day, one of the causes of that is the over-centralization of power in Washington, D.C., where, you know, the fate of your local public school depends on who wins a presidential election. It should depend on who wins the school board elections and to a lesser extent, the state government elections. The department was created by Jimmy Carter for the purpose of gaining political favor with the teachers' unions. The freak out over Betsy Devos is because it's not going to be, the Department of Education will be run for the benefit of poor kids, especially trapped in failing schools, and giving them more opportunities rather than for the benefit of the teachers unions, who are doing just fine because however badly the kids are getting educated, they're still getting well paid and have in practice tenure that makes even incompetent teachers very difficult to fire. Secretary Devos went to a meeting at a public school in Washington, D.C. today with the chancellor of the D.C. public schools and with the Washington Teachers Union, which you would think is a good thing, and a mob showed up and blocked her from entering the schoolhouse door. You know, apparently they were watching all their old George Wallace videos and found that to be very inspiring. So she had to go back in her Secret Service protective card, go around, find another entrance, and then some people in the mob still continued to chase her. As former Obama Education Secretary Arne Duncan said, whatever you think about her, really trying to keep her out of the public schools is not in anybody's interest.
Eric, it was interesting to me that we saw two Republican senators flip on this one. And I don't know if it was a safe enough environment where they knew it's only going to be two, it's going to be 50-50, Pence is going to decide, so we're fine. But it did, I think, at least put a microscope on the fact that there's only a a very thin majority for Republicans in the U.S. Senate. I don't think it's going to be a slam dunk every time. What did you think about it coming down to a tie vote and the vice president having to break it?
Yeah, it would have been much more interesting if there was a third Republican senator, and the third was always going to be harder to find than the first two, and all this social media traffic about Cory Gardner's wavering or Tom Tillis from North Carolina's wavering, or everyone was supposedly wavering. I always took with a grain of salt. None of them were wavering. Those 50 votes were locked in there. I'm echoing, or my thought process is echoing a column I read, Ross Douthat, a columnist in the New York Times, who wrote a thoughtful piece and basically said in some way this particular battle was heartening in the sense that it was a standard issue political battle that we could have had with any Republican president. It almost harkens back to pre-Donald Trump days, if any of us can remember a time when Donald Trump wasn't on the political scene and dominating the political scene. But here you had a nominee who is skewing to the choice side of the equation and against the teacher union side of the equation. And people pick up sides accordingly, with Republicans endorsing that viewpoint, with Democrats obviously being completely enthralled and beholden in way, way too many cases and with way too much intensity to teacher union interests. So I subscribe to the notion that this fight was not particularly a Donald Trump fight. I'm also curious that this is the nomination of all of Trump's nomination that became so galvanizing. I don't think at the time it was made you would have expected this would be the penultimate fight. Given that the Democrats made it the penultimate fight, came up one vote short, you wonder if they're going to be able to defeat any nominee. I mean, the list of who's still left to be confirmed is getting short. And if you have an education department who, for the next few years, tilts slightly on the side of choice, both public and private, and on the side of less regulation, I think the country can survive.
It seemed back in November, December, it was such a target-rich environment. It was almost hard to figure out where they can focus the energy. I agree with you. It was surprising to see this was where everything was focused. Joey, what has the effect of the Devos confirmation had on either educational reformers or education current supporters on Capitol Hill?
Well, I don't know about those people, but I know about teachers, and I know about teachers in Colorado, and I definitely know about teachers in Alabama. So I asked a couple of people that I went to high school with that are teachers that have had careers in the education community and said, what is it about Betsy Devos that gets people worked up? And my friend Tom Highfield, who's been a teacher and a principal for 30 years, says that during the confirmation hearing, she showed no understanding of the challenges and the laws and the policies that affect public schools. And the choice for choice's sake, where that breaks is that that works in a lot of circumstances, but it doesn't work in all such circumstances. And public schools don't have the luxury of saying, we're only going to teach certain circumstances. They educate every kid that shows up at the door. And she's alienated the education community by painting them as failures. I guess, to use Donald Trump's word, losers. So she's walking in the door with that against her. And Democrats, politically speaking, Democrats understand that people are passionate about their schools and their children. So they're more than happy to make Betsy DeVos the face of Donald Trump's administration. So I'm not surprised by the rancor over this at all. My friend Laura Hoke, she is a librarian, and she says that, frankly, she's terrified by Betsy DeVos. So people are taking this serious. It's not just another administrator pushing paper, it's pushing policies that affect children and affect lives.
Patty, is this the end of our conversation about this controversial cabinet pick?
Oh, I'm guessing no. I mean, to follow Joey, there's a real reason, there's a very obvious reason why she was the one who came closest so far. Although it's tough competition for who performed worse at the hearings, she was beyond doubt. She came across completely incompetent, had no idea what was going on, the vastness of what she's done. In Michigan, she's gained some kudos for some of her work with choice, but she looked like she flunked kindergarten at those hearings. So it's not a surprise that people were fighting. And plus, these are issues that parents care about. The parents flooding the phone lines at Congress. I mean, the parents sending pizzas because they couldn't get through with little notes inside the pizzas to their legislators, don't vote for her. That's all great. It's bad when they're protesting and not letting her get into a school, but to let their elected officials know they don't approve of this choice, that's great.